I want to tell you about the moment I first noticed something was wrong. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single document that appended everything I thought I knew. It started with a photograph, a 19th century photograph of a building in Philadelphia. A tall, slender tower attached to what appeared to be a civic building, ornate beyond any functional necessity, rising to a point that seemed almost devotional. I'd seen that tower before. I was certain of it, but I'd never been to Philadelphia. It took me 3 days to remember where I'd seen it. A postcard reproduction, Paris, a different building, a different street, a different decade on the caption, but the same tower, same proportions, same layered stonework ascending in the same deliberate rhythm. Same windows, narrow and arched, positioned at intervals that seemed designed not for light, but for something else, something I couldn't name yet. I told myself it was coincidence. Architectural fashion travels, styles migrate. This is what historians tell us, and for a long time I believed them. But I kept pulling on that thread. The deeper I went into 19th century civic architecture, not the famous landmarks, not the monuments everyone photographs, but the secondary buildings, the utility structures, the towers attached to train stations and waterworks and municipal halls, the more the coincidence explanation started to strain, then buckle, then break entirely. What I found wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a pattern, and patterns, in my experience, don't lie at the official explanation. Let's talk about the towers themselves because they deserve your full attention before we go any further. Across the northeastern United States, between roughly 1840 and 1910, what I began to think of as the compressed window, hundreds of towers were constructed, or so we're told, in connection with municipal waterwork systems. The official explanation is elegant and sensible. These were stamped pipes, pressure towers, tall enough to maintain hydraulic pressure across a city's water distribution network. Physics, engineering, practicality, the kind of explanation that closes a door very firmly. Except the explanation collapses almost immediately when you look at the actual buildings. A functional pressure standpipe is by definition a large vertical pipe. You encase it in brick for protection. Perhaps you add a maintenance access door. Then you're done. What you do not do, what no engineer would ever specify because it serves no hydraulic purpose whatsoever, is crown the structure with a copper-clad cup. You don't add decorative stone carters at each story. You don't install narrow lancet windows at precise vertical intervals. You don't orient the tower's primary face toward a specific compass, direction the same direction in city after city, but they did all of those things, consistently, uniformly, across dozens of American cities. Different architects, different construction firms, different decades, different municipal governments, all performing the same impossible choreography of ornament and orientation. Here's what started to unsettle me. If these towers were truly about hydraulic pressure, about engineering necessity, the documentation should be abundant. We have construction records for buildings far less elaborate. We have engineering specifications for every major municipal project of that era. For structures this expensive, this widespread, this presumably significant to urban infrastructure, you would expect detailed drawings, materials lists, authorization records, correspondence between engineers and municipal officials. You would expect footnotes, contracts, budgets, arguments about costs. What you actually find is almost nothing. The clustered silence started systematically cross-referencing Boston, Providence, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington. The pattern spread before me like a circuit map. Tower after tower, each one different in style, different in materials, yet identical in the most critical details. The orientation, the intervals, the windows, the copper caps, the absence. The absence was the pattern, not the presence of the towers, the absence of documents about them. For structures built in the compressed window between 1840 and 1910, we should expect papers, letters from city councils, budget discussions, debates about costs and engineering decisions. Instead, municipal archives revealed almost nothing. No design specifications, no construction contracts, no materials invoices. In some cases, towers appear in maps and photographs, but disappear from city records the moment you look for documentation about their construction. It's as if they were built by ghosts. I searched newspapers, building permits, architectural journals, the period journals that documented every major construction project, every innovation in American civic architecture. And the strangest finding of all, when these towers appeared in the press at all, which was rarely, they were described with vague language: ornamental water tower, pressure mechanism for the distribution system. Never with specifics, never with the kind of technical detail that engineers and architects lavished on every other significant structure. One researcher noted in passing that the towers seemed to cluster in specific geographic regions, not randomly distributed across the Northeast, but concentrated in zones. When I plotted them on a map, the pattern became almost unbearably clear. They were clustered, intentionally placed, oriented not toward water sources or the logic of city infrastructure, but toward something else, something coordinated. The statistical boundary here is what the numbers tell us when you cross-reference all available records between 1840 and 1910. Approximately 147 significant towers matching this architectural pattern were constructed in major northeastern American cities. Of those 147 towers documented in photographs, civic maps, and urban inventories, 89% lack any surviving construction documentation. 89%. For modern utility infrastructure, we expect documentation rates above 95%. The absence here is anomalous. It's clustered. It's concentrated in that compressed window. And then this is the part that matters: it stops after 1910. These towers ceased to appear in new construction. What exists was not demolished. Most survived intact into the 20th century, but they were not replicated, not expanded upon, not referenced in later municipal planning or architectural literature. It's as if they became invisible, like institutions collectively decided to stop acknowledging their existence. Even as the physical structures remain standing in cities across America, the compressed window closes, the pattern halts, and then, in the decades that followed, documentation about the towers themselves began to disappear. Photographs were lost, records were purged. In some cases, city archives were reorganized in ways that separated the tower records from any meaningful context. The physical objects remained, but the knowledge of why they existed, what they were built for, who authorized them, that knowledge vanished. The orientation asterisk. But here's what I cannot stop thinking about. Those windows, that specific orientation. If you visit these towers today, the ones that still stand, you notice something that your brain refuses to process at first. The windows on the primary face aren't positioned for visibility into the interior. The intervals are too regular, too deliberate, too specific. The narrow lancet style, the arching, the way they're positioned vertically in an ascending sequence, they look designed to emit something rather than admit light. And the orientation, north, not magnetic north, which shifts over time. True north, astronomical north, the way the primary faces orient. You could calibrate an instrument from them. This is true across dozens of cities, across different architects, across the compressed window. Not one tower misaligned, not one builder confused about the cardinal directions. Unified, coordinated, intentional. The copper caps complicate this further. Copper is conductive. Copper is used in instruments designed to interact with atmospheric phenomena. The copper caps sit at the apex of each tower, exposed as sky, oriented upward. In some cases, documented when photographs were still detailed enough to show such things, the caps appeared to contain components, fixtures, elements that served no purpose related to water pressure or hydraulic engineering. I don't know what they were, but I know the explanation we've been given cannot account for them. The question what disturbs me most is not what the towers were, it's that we stopped asking. Somewhere in the early 20th century, institutional memory simply ceased. The towers became unremarkable, urban features so ordinary that no one questioned their purpose. Historians moved past them, architects ignored them, engineers forgot they existed. The documentation vanished, and with it, the capacity to question. Today, if you visit Philadelphia, you can still see the tower from that photograph. It stands attached to a civic building, beautiful and strange, and no plaque explains its function. No historical society has documented its construction details. Ask a museum curator about these towers and you'll receive vague answers. Pressure, regulation, they'll say, as if repeating a script they don't fully understand. Ask them for specifics. Watch them become uncertain. In Paris, the tower still stands. In Baltimore, in Boston, dozens of them, scattered across the eastern seaboard, hidden in plain sight because we've learned not to see them. We've learned not to ask what they do. We've learned to accept the official explanation, flawed as it is, because the alternative that something significant was coordinated across an entire civilization and then deliberately obscured feels too destabilizing to consider. What were they? What was their true purpose? Why did every major city in this compressed window require them? Why the unified design, the deliberate orientation, the impossible absence of documentation? Why did knowledge of them cease the moment their construction stopped? Why did an entire civilization decide to forget? I don't have answers, but I know the explanation we were given is incomplete. And I know that sometimes, the most important patterns are the ones we've trained ourselves not to see. The towers still stand, the silence remains, and somewhere in that absence, something significant was lost.